2024 meeting of the Corpus Christi Planning Commission to order. Ms. Ruth, will you please call roll?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Miller.
Here.
Vice Chairman York.
Here.
Commissioner Mendel. Absent. Commissioner Salazar Garza.
Here.
Commissioner Munoz.
Here.
Commissioner Batagi is absent. Commissioner Lerma. Here. Commissioner Hedrick.
Here.
Commissioner Budd.
Here.
We have a quorum to conduct the meeting.
Thank you. At this time, we will open up the public comment for anything not pertaining to any particular agenda items. Ms. Ruth, will you read the rules of decorum?
Thank you, Chairman. Citizens will be allowed to attend and make public comments in person at City Planning Commission meetings. The public is invited to speak on any agenda item and any other items that pertain to the Planning Commission. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you choose to speak during this period, you will not be allowed to speak again when the specific item is being considered in order of the agenda.
All right, thank you. Would anybody like to speak on anything in general other than any specific agenda items tonight? I see none, so I'll go ahead and close the public comment section. Move on to the approval of absences. And I will note for the record that Commissioner Mandel has arrived.
Michael York, I make a motion that we approve the absences for May 15th for Commissioners Mandel and Munoz.
I second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to the approval of minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes from the May 15th, 2024 meeting.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to consent public hearing, discussion and possible action, items A, B, and C.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Orozco with Development Services, Planner 3. I'm going to be reading into record consent items A, B, and C. Starting off with plats. Item number 2. This is a conditional approval for Patma Estate subdivision, final plat of 19.2 acres located north of South Staple Street and west of Oso Parkway. Item number 3, this is a conditional approval for Rottfield Plaza, preliminary plat of 6.26 acres located north of Rottfield Road and west of Saratoga Boulevard. Staff is recommending approval. The plats do meet TRC comments and the state local government code. Moving on with consent item B, time extensions. This is a time extension, second request for a 12-month time extension for Rancho Vista Unit 25, a final plat of 20.29 acres for a 12-month extension. This is located east of Rottfield Road and south of Yorktown Boulevard. Staff is recommending approval for the time extension. Item number 5 for zoning. This is a rezoning for Oliver and Sadeh Amani and Viola Omani. This is a rezoning at a property at near 6004 Yorktown from the RS Single Family 6th District and the CN2 Neighborhood Commercial District. Staff is recommending approval for this zoning item. Staff can answer questions at this time on these consent items, A, B, and C.
Commissioners, questions for staff? Go ahead, Commissioner Mandel.
On item A, I was looking at this parcel. Looks like the southernmost part of the parcel abuts South Stable Street. And according to the not land use, area development plan, that is marked for commercial development. Can you confirm that?
You're talking about Rottfield item number 3?
Item, Section A, item 2, Padma Estates.
Padma Estates.
I'll look that up real quick, Mark.
The south boundary is FM 2444.
Correct. And it looks like the first 100, 200 feet of that is, according to area development plan, is commercial.
You talking about across the street?
I'm talking about both sides of Staples
immediately.
being commercial.
Yeah, let me see if I can look at that.
Okay.
see that.
While Mark looks for that, Bria Whitmire Development Services, it's actually not annexed, and so the zoning hasn't been officially set for it, and that's why it's on here as conditional, as it is pending annexation. The ADP, as noted in the zoning plan, it is not consistent with the ADP. However, it hasn't been annexed yet, and so the zoning is set when it's annexed. Right now, it doesn't have any zoning, if that helps.
Was that, what was, your question was on the adjacent property or this particular property?
This particular property.
Okay.
There's no zoning on it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons it's under conditional pending the annexation and the rezoning. I believe they have to rezone for the large lots.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for staff? Commissioner Budd?
I see there's some wetlands on that too, and then there's a retention pond. Is that, I guess, is that just gonna, is that the whole purpose of the retention pond?
No, but, I mean, I don't know, the designers here.
Wetlands, is there gonna be a drainage issue or something?
So the PIs are being reviewed right now as well, and they have a ditch system. As it's not been annexed yet, they've also designated these as private streets, and so they wouldn't be city infrastructure, but it's open ditch section. This plat and PIs were approved almost 2 years ago. They expired, so they're having to resubmit everything. And for that reason, we made clear to them that these would be private streets, as the city doesn't want anything to do with that type of street. And for that reason, as well, the conditional comment with the PIs. The PIs are under review as well. So the drainage right now with the open ditches has addressed. They also have a detention pond in their design.
Yeah, as far as the wetlands, no structures can be put in there, but as far as the detention and the easements can be placed within them.
Commissioner Hedrick?
So my main concern with this neighborhood is that it's being built to outside city limit, requirements, but then it is going to be annexed. So it's my understanding that it's not going to have sidewalks, it's going to have open ditches, it's not going to have curves or gutters. But then the city is going to take it over and then be responsible for it. So, in my opinion, if it's going to be annexed by the city, it should be living up to any city standards that we have of any normal city streets. I understand it's outside city limits now, but if it's going to be annexed before it even gets recorded, then it should have to meet those standards.
Agreed. The other part of that was that it was conditional that it was HOA maintained streets. The city won't have anything to do maintaining this subdivision.
And it can be that way without being gated?
I believe there was a gate on the plans, but the PIs are not, haven't been reapproved. The PIs were approved a long time ago, but now we have a new submittal, and that new submittal is what is still under review.
I understand.
And that could be part of the condition as well. That could be stated as part of
the developer does want to put, he did initially want to put the curb and gutter. The section right now that was under consideration, it does still have the ditches within the right of way. And so that's something, that's one of the conditional items as well that needs to get straightened out prior to PI approval.
Okay. Yeah, I just feel that regardless, public or private, it should still live up to our city standards. Because God forbid, what happens if this HOA goes under and then the city has to take over the neighborhood and it's not up to standards, then ultimately it's going to fall on the taxpayers. So, it'd be nice if it was already up to standards from the beginning. So.
I got a quick question on the zoning. What Commissioner Mandel brought up, so this hasn't been zoned yet, right? We're doing the plat first and then the zoning will come through and it'll all go together when it gets annexed? Is that correct?
The notes on the plat are that it's conditional upon annexation and zoning. So if it's not annexed and zoned appropriately, this plat is null and void.
Has the zoning been submitted?
It has been submitted, but the annexation case has to go with the zoning, and the annexation application has had some holdups. I was just on a meeting today with planning department, and they had some holdups with the application for annexation. And that's why we wanted to go ahead and keep the plat going, but pinned it, to tie it to it. So if that doesn't go through, this drops off.
I get that it's the developer's risk to do this before the other stuff, and that's fine, but where I'm going with the line of questions is if this plat is laid out not in agreement with the ADP and they're submitting a zoning and an annexation, has staff looked at that and decided they're okay with this not meeting the ADP?
That's part of the annexation review with the planning department, which the ADP is also the planning department's document. So that's why we wanted to make that pending upon that review.
Okay, so staff doesn't support the zoning yet. We don't know. So that
Right.
it could come to us in a couple weeks and recommend denial or
Correct.
adding commercial or something like that.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll just make a comment that I don't like it when it happens in this order.
Right. I do want to mention that this plat was previously approved. It did expire a couple of times. And because of that, then at that particular time when it was approved with the OCL requirements. And now that we're making them annex, now they're going to have to abide by the city infrastructure requirements.
Can you list for us, just so we know, if someone's making a motion to approve as presented, what are the conditions that are tacked on right now?
There were numerous. I was looking at them. Let me see if I can pull those up. They're basically on the report. They're the comments that are open. There were the public improvements here, number 4. The next item, number 7, stormwater management plan. And then, of course, the annexation rezoning. And
Mostly, I just wanted to make sure that there is a condition. That it is listed in here that this is conditional on the zoning being approved that matches
Right. Yes,
this
it
plat.
does. Number 14.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be any of the comments in the report that it still shows open are the conditions of the,
And the last item was a letter from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on the letter.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? If not, I'll go ahead and open up the public comment on items 2 through 5. And we have one speaker signed up, Mr. DeLeon, for item number 5. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Robert De Leon, 6101 Sir Jack. My property is right behind the applicant's property, and I'm not opposed to the zoning change. The only thing noticing in staff's comments is that the applicant is required to have a 10-foot buffer yard with some sort of fencing, and I'm asking the Commissioners to make the recommendation that that fencing needs to be a concrete panel wall instead of wood. I think not knowing what kind of tenants are going to be in this property and what activity is going to be behind there, I think a concrete wall would be more secure for the residents of Kingsport. Additionally, the property next to this potential development has put in a brick wall, and it's more visually appealing as compared to the other developments that have occurred across the street. It's really the residents of Kingsport's fencing. There was no additional fencing added. So I would ask that you agree or accept the recommendation with a concrete wall instead of just a solid wood wall. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for items 2, or any other public comments for items 2 through 5? I see none. I will go ahead and close the public comment for items 2 through 5. Oh, hold on one second. Commissioner York.
Can staff clarify what the landscape buffer requirement is for that item 5?
I know the gentleman mentioned the 10-foot buffer requirement, but I can verify that it would be in the UDC buffer requirements.
I know sometimes it's like 5 feet and 5 points or something, and so the lowest one is just a wood fence would accommodate it.
It would be 10-foot setback buffer and then the fence requirement, basically.
But this buffer is just the points that are required. They could satisfy it with just a regular privacy fence.
Yeah, is
So
that
I
correct,
found it in
Andrew?
the
No?
report, I don't want to interrupt, it has a type B buffer yard will be required consisting of a minimum 10-foot buffer yard plus 10 points.
So the 10.
May be minimally achieved by an 8-foot solid wood fence.
8-foot fence?
An 8-foot solid wood or 8-foot concrete panel is what's in the, provided in the report.
Oh, okay.
I can provide a little bit more clarity since had a lot of experience with buffer yards over the years. It is a 10-foot, 10-point minimum requirement. The first 5 points can be satisfied with a 6-foot fence, and then you can pick up the other 5 by various means, whether additional setbacks, landscaping, tree lines, all types of things. What we typically find, though, when you have a shopping center that could potentially come in, you usually have a service alley, maybe dumpsters are set in the back. That automatically triggers an 8-foot wall. So if we call them noise generators, if you put mechanical equipment, a service alley, rear parking, dumpsters, that automatically triggers that wall regardless of your point requirement.
Does the noise triggering wall, if they have a service yard, does that have to be masonry or can that be wood as well?
No, it must be masonry.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Not a problem.
Any other questions or comments for staff?
Is the applicant requesting CN2 or CG2?
CN2, neighborhood commercial.
Okay.
Did you see CG2 somewhere else?
It just said the applicant amended the original request to CG2 on 522. So it seemed like it was CN2, and then they wanted to change it to CG2.
Originally, it was CG, and after discussion with staff, it was amended to CN. It was stepped
Gotcha.
down.
So it was downgraded. Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments for staff, I'll entertain a motion.
Michael York, I'll make a motion, we approve items 2 through 5 as presented.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to new zoning, item 6.
Okay, item 6, consent, not consent, but item, new zoning D. This is a rezoning for Mustang Island LLC. You can go ahead and put it on the screen here. It's a rezoning for property at or near 7213 State Highway 361 from the RMAT, multifamily apartment tourist, to the RV recreational vehicle district. The proposed use is to allow for commercial overnight accommodation use, particularly an RV park. The ADP is the Pioneer Island, Mustang Island. The future land use map is planned development. Existing zoning is the RMAT, multifamily apartment tourist district. The adjacent land uses are vacant. For the north and for the south, there is a low density residential. To the east and the west is also vacant. And yes. 3 notices were mailed out outside the 200-foot buffer. 1 notice mailed out, inside the 200-foot buffer. 1 notice mailed out outside the 200-foot buffer with 0 in oppose or favor. The proposed rezoning is generally consistent with the Plan CC. However, it is inconsistent with the future land use designation of Plan Unit planned development, I'm sorry. Therefore, it will warrant an amendment to the future land use map. While the proposed rezoning is inconsistent with the designation of the planned development, the proposed development is part of a master plan that includes a mixture of land uses. The comprehensive plan describes planned developments as lands that are currently undeveloped and underutilized, but may be suitable in the future for a variety of uses, taking into account environmental and other constraints. The proposed amending strongly ties into the blended residential community and designation location vision theme of the ADP. Furthering the development goals of the plan, tourist-oriented developments are encouraged along the east side of the State Highway 361. The master development is context-sensitive, respects its environment, and supports tourism and nearby residents with a mix of land uses to be provided. Residents are cognizant that tourism is part of the identity of the area, and the public's input shows acknowledgement that a balance must be maintained between preserving the environment, being a safe, family-friendly place, and inviting tourism. Staff finds the proposed use and site contextually fitting. Staff recommends approval to the RV Recreational Vehicle Park District.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Commissioners, questions for staff?
I have a question. Being the fact that this is mentioned that it's inconsistent with the future land use, so I guess the future land use of it before it wants to become an RV recreational park was supposed to be just the residential, the multifamily. So it being wanting to zone for the RV recreational, what kind of requirements and standards are they going to have? Because there's a lot of them that exist already out there, and some of them are in good condition, and some of them are not.
Right.
So do they have requirements, being that this is going to be a new development?
Yes, the UDC, I guess when it came out in 2011, it did establish a little bit newer regulations. So they are abiding by those RV regulations in our UDC text.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because, I mean, I understand that they're going to abide by what you're stating, but like, some of them are a little bit more,
Higher standard?
yeah, you know, I mean, some of them a little.
Well, they're parks, so it's, they're placed in one platted lot. There is a minimum acreage requirement. I believe it's 3 acres.
And, I understand this is like,
We do have the client here. They want to speak.
Okay.
Susana Rios with 7213 State Highway 361. For the, it's basically going to be a luxury RV park. Basically, it's going to have the tiki huts, and it's going to be mainly individual RV sections that will have an outdoor fire pit and stuff. It's going to be more upscale to what some of the other ones that are out there. And basically, it's going to have a swimming pool, it's going to have laundry room facilities, and it's going to follow all the rules and regulations that are required for us to build this RV park. And then this is only part of a 29.9 acre development, and we currently do have a permit application for a 4-story hotel that is in progress, and we've received comments. And then we're going to submit a rezoning for the other side of this RV park for a retail center and apartments. So it's a big development. We are currently working with the GLO on 2 crossovers, and that's in progress as well. So I just wanted to let you know that it's not just the RV park, but there's actually a lot going on.
Well, it's important for us to continue consistency, especially in that area, since we are a tourism city.
Correct.
And everybody likes to go out to that area and park their RVs, especially these northerners that come in, and I just want something that's consistent.
Right. To
show that we have really nice areas.
Yes, and it's going to be, like I said, a luxury RV park.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is this just going to be for rentals only, or are you going to have people living there long term?
It's going to be rentals only.
More short term?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I have questions for staff. So on the, well, actually, we'll go to the rentals question. So the question that was just asked about rentals versus long-term, is that, I know the applicant said what the answer was, but they could change their mind. Is it set in the zoning that it can be one or the other?
It's limited, I believe, in the.
Is it the 6-month rule?
It's limited to 180 days, regardless if the pad sites are sold or if they're rented short-term.
Okay.
Cap is still 180.
In the presentation, it said, I know the application is just for strictly RV, but it said multiple land uses. And the applicant may have answered this question, but are the multiple land uses on other pieces of land, not this piece of land? Okay. The one real comment, I don't want to say really even concerned, but we've got a lot of RV parks on this strip of land, and which is fine. I think it fits. But what seems to happen sometimes is somebody comes in, they have an idea, they want to do this park. For whatever reason, later the numbers come back, it doesn't work, then it just sits. So part of me wants to push this to be a special permit. That way, if it sits for 12 months, nothing happens, or 24 months, whatever it is, then it goes away, it reverts back to RMAT rather than just a piece of RV zoned land just sitting here. I don't think that would have any negative impacts on the developer. Did staff consider that, or?
Well, we try not to set any type of speculative zoning, which you're saying if, then maybe if the zoning would revert, the decision would be purely on the land use. Is the land use suitable for the location in which they're requesting? Developers, that's part of the development risk. If developer chooses to a specific site and the numbers end up not crunching, that should have been figured out before they even asked for the zoning. So we probably would not want to stave in setting essentially temporary zoning.
I understand that. I'm thinking of it the other way. I don't want to permanently rezone something to RV, and then if it doesn't get built, it's just stuck there as RV, and then somebody else can come in and build not a luxury RV park. I know they could do that too. I understand that. We can't control how nice of an RV park they build, but it just seems like with RV or mobile home, those are very special, specific zonings. So just my opinion, I would like to see a special permit so that if for some reason they don't develop, that it reverts back to the original zoning rather than remaining as RV.
The master plat was approved either earlier this year or late last year on this tract of land. So I did notice the boundary for the zoning is a little bit larger than what the master plan showed. So that was the only difference I saw.
Towards it, the idea is if you just don't do anything at all and it just sits vacant for a year, then it would revert. But I think, Andrew, can you talk to that?
UDC requires a building permit must be pulled to keep a special permit active.
So if they've submitted plans and they're working towards it, because they don't have transformers delivered, that's not going to revert their zoning.
They would have to submit some form of permit, and that would be a comment pending electrical service. I'm not sure that's a water we want to get into.
Okay.
And the other reason that, I understand your trepidation and kind of on our side, we see the grand picture, meaning that many times I'll get phone calls saying a bank doesn't want to necessarily write a note for a property that has a special permit or a PUD. They become very nervous because their feelings are, if just as you mentioned, if it goes under, they're not able to retain the zoning that was achieved for the site. So the bank can't foreclose and then say, hey, I have an RV site, I can sell it to another investor. That's another reason why special permits is usually what I call my get out of zoning free card, can cause ripples down the road that we didn't anticipate, and we're learning from those choices.
I guess between Commissioner York's comments and Commissioner Salazar-Garza's comments, as planning commissioners, we have to determine whether something's appropriate, right? And through zoning, we can't really, dictate the flavor of a development per se, which is a concern of Commissioner Salazar-Garza's. But we have, in past times, I can remember a previous RV zoning case that came before us on this same stretch of highway that was what I like to call bait and switched. They brought out, lovely 3D models and showed a video for us and everything, and with palapas and everything that you're describing, and a huge community pool and everything else. And then just as soon as he left and got his zoning, he sold it like that, and it became something quite different. So appropriateness is very important to be cognizant of, and then also, Mark, you had mentioned that the property to the south is vacant. I'm not showing it as
To the
vacant.
north is vacant.
No, there was low-density residential to the south.
Could you pull up the slide that shows the notification area? So why is the notification area, why does it not extend to the south?
It extends onto the other property owners, so to the south and to the east are owned by the same owner as it's owned by the applicant. So
Okay.
we wouldn't get a negative response from someone on their own property. And the way the 200-foot radii landed, it didn't touch Mr. Badalich's property further to the south, which is the row of single-family, or they are townhouses, so it's technically multi-family land use, but they're permitted as single-family units, but it's a townhouse development.
And is this its own separate piece of property, separate from the rest of the development?
On the master preliminary plat, yes. So the kind of the backstory that Mr. Rios is explaining is that it's part of a larger planned development, including a hotel, a convenience store, another multi-family development. That southern part, which is zoned also RMAT, allows hotel developments by right, so it did not require them to rezone for that use. And in this case, and each one of those lots on the master preliminary plat is going to be an independent lot, which triggers a whole other list of requirements when it comes to beachfront construction certificates. So zoning is one step on many steps to come.
But the outline that we're looking at right here that's hatched
Yes.
is a portion of a larger piece of property, or it's its own, has it been?
It is by meets and bounds of what is being zoned, but the master preliminary plat identifies this soon-to-be lot on the platting side as to be RV,
Okay.
the RV portion.
Okay. Similar to the previous plat that we discussed at length tonight, the order of things and the way it's presented is important. And that's all I have to say about that.
Right, in this case, to your point, Mr. Chair, the zoning is being done first before the plat. There's preliminary plats coming through, but in this case, what I agree with you, what's called the right way, you do your zoning first before your plat gets laid out. And so in this case, they're seeking the rezoning by meets and bounds prior to any final plats coming down the pipe.
It was a master plat, and the master plat shows proposed rezonings on the boundaries of the master plat. So the next step will be the preliminary plat and then the final plat.
And we're going to have 3 preliminary plats, which would be a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3, because the development is so large, we're not going to be able, the owner's not going to be able to attack the whole, development at one time. So this is where we want to start. We started with the hotel, which is in progress, and the 2 boardwalks that's in progress, and now we're doing the rezoning for the RV park.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Just a clarifying question from staff. You said the master plat as in past tense. Did that already come through here?
Yes.
Yes, master preliminary plat, it was called Waterbury Park, I believe.
Correct.
And then the preliminary plat is coming up? And just because the applicant made this comment, I want to ask, she said multiple preliminary plats, but that's not normally how we do things. Is that correct? Or are you talking, is it one preliminary with a bunch of finals?
You can imagine the analogy I always use is a puzzle. You can have imagine a puzzle of a fruit basket, and then your preliminary plat can be one section of the puzzle. Your finals are when you're getting down into the pieces. So you can have multiple preliminary plats as part of a master preliminary plat, because as long as you're staying within the 10 years of phasing, which is what the UDC sets up, each preliminary plat is then good for 2 years apiece, and then your final is good for a year.
Okay. That's all I have.
I just find it, like if I was the property owner to the south and an applicant came with, let's say the whole property is 100 acres, and the applicant came and asked for a zoning that maybe I didn't have a problem with, and then they came back later by meets and bounds, and because it was not within the notification area, slipped in an RV park, and which disallowed me to have any, a voice, it would seem that would probably give me personally heartburn if I was.
Well, the signs are posted out there.
And that's it. I understand your point, sir. I think the balance we have and what we deal with any zoning cases, that the signs are there to cover the area that doesn't receive a mailed notice, and council can still hold their own level of decision-making. It wouldn't force them into the 20% situation, which I think is what you're alluding to, if so many notices came back. But every person still has a voice, whether they live next door or in Cal Allen or any other part of the city. They can still oppose if they so feel. And I've seen plenty of cases in my time, even from folks that lived outside the 200-foot radius, that had an impact on whether or not a zoning passed. So yes, I completely agree with you. The opposition holds more credence when they're right next door and they can send a mailed notice, but they're not completely without a voice if they so choose want to oppose.
When was the base zoning, the current base zoning of the property established?
At annexation in 2001.
And it's RMAT?
Back then, it was just called the AT district, which was an apartment tourism. It was our first crack at a resort style. And when the UDC was adopted, it was split between RMAT and then the CR districts were created.
And in theory, if she wanted to, she could have asked by meets and bounds, right smack dab in the center of this property,
Sure.
and escape notification of anybody.
There is a degree, I would say there's
And
degrees
if I may, if someone were to do that, their zoning would be limited to that little box that they created.
Right. No, I get it, but it's a possibility.
Sure.
Yeah, just because
I could tell you plenty of stories where folks use platting to get out of building roads, and I'm sure many of you have heard those cases on plats. So every developer has a strategy. That's business. I don't hold it against them, and they make decisions based on what helps their financing. But yes, I've seen certain techniques used in how notices impact a property. It's not right or wrong. It is what the code states they have to do.
okay. All right.
I actually have a question since you brought that up. Your notice slide mentioned one mailed outside. Is that the gentleman that owns land to the south? You mentioned him by name.
So by state law, we must notify every school district that's impacted. So that is always the one that you'll see pop up.
So I know that the owner to the south then isn't in the mailed area, but you seem to know who he was. And if it's a giant strip of townhome lots, I'm guessing he doesn't live there. He's probably not seeing the signs. He probably lives out of town. I don't know. But do you know if he's aware at all?
I can tell you that Mr. Badalich is very active in that area. When you mentioned the previous zoning case to the south of his property, we haven't received any phone calls from him, at least that I received personally. But I'm sure the folks that live in the townhouse development probably are in contact with him. I'm only speculating. I can't say for sure.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, with that, I'll open up the public hearing for item number 6. If anybody would like to speak on item number 6, please come forward. I see none, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve item 6.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 7.
Item number 7, new zoning. This is a zoning case for Furco Homes LLC. This is a rezoning for a property at or near 1501 South 19th Street. This is from the RS6 Single Family 6 District to the RM1 Multifamily District. Proposed use is to allow for residential household living uses, particularly townhomes. The ADP is the Southeast Area Development Plan. Future land use map is medium density residential. The existing zoning district currently is RS6 Single Family 6. The adjacent land uses to the north is vacant and low density residential. To the south is low density residential, and to the east is low density residential as well as to the west. 37 notices were mailed out inside the 200-foot buffer, 7 notices mailed outside the 200-foot buffer. We have 0 opposed and 0 in favor as return notices. The proposed rezoning is consistent with many elements and goals of Plan CC, however, is inconsistent with the future land use designation of medium density residential. The proposed infill development is in agreement with the Southeast ADP specific goal, although adopted almost 29 years ago, of protecting the predominantly stable residential neighborhood and promoting the efficient development of underutilized and remaining vacant land in the area. The subject parcel is also within an established residential neighborhood, however, with the housing built prior to 1960 and deteriorating. The Plan CC encourages the proper location of land uses based on compatibility, locational needs, and characteristics of each use. However, strongly discourages the juxtaposition of intense and sensitive land areas. While a multifamily district is classified as a high-density development, 8,900 square foot corner parcel that immediately adjacent to the single-family districts reduces the development footprint of the parcel. The provision for parking may be also further reduce the building footprint to accommodate vehicular circulation. The subject parcel is also within an area of the southeast of the city characterized by one of the lowest brackets of medium household incomes. This is an opportunity to supply housing in a predominantly single-family area. Staff is recommending approval to the RM1 multifamily district. Any questions for staff?
Commissioners, questions for staff?
Just out of curiosity, this zoning and the last one, staff recommended approval, but they weren't on consent. Is that, what's the reason? Just because they weren't
the future land use map.
Okay. Did want to ask, can you pull up the aerial, I just wanted to see a little closer, the adjacent properties that are already zoned, you know, medium density residential, are any of those developed?
Yes, it's pretty
There's
much
houses
in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
Not the single family, but there's a strip along the road that is already rezoned, it looks like, for medium density. Or is anything developed currently as medium density, or is everything around this either vacant or single family?
I can pull up the map.
There was a previous zoning case not within the last few months that was to the north. It was just approved by council to have the duplex zoning, the RSTF.
Okay.
About a block to the north, and it's another odd-shaped lot where we see an opportunity for infill development. And similarly, you have this vacant portion, which, for lack of a term, looks like a pocket park, but is more prone to have more development, meaning if we can fit in a few more units that are affordable, that's a great opportunity to get some more folks under permanent housing.
Understood. Yeah, I support it. I was just curious if this is kind of like the first one of this kind in this neighborhood, or if this has already been happening up and down the road.
This happened on that portion about a block and a half to the north.
Okay.
And I foresee we're going to see many more of these type of situations where we as staff see great opportunity to have vacant land have infill to a highest and best use outside of just one more single-family home, but could have multifamily townhouse style.
Is this the lot right here, Andrew? 1501?
Yes, and just across the street to the north of the next block is the previous zoning to
Oh, that's correct.
RSTF.
We just heard this case.
Yeah, those are the ones I was looking at to see. I didn't know if they had been, so that's the one that just happened.
Those were just platted,
Okay.
and they'll be pulling their building permits pretty soon.
And I guess since I have before, I just want to ask, I mean, I trust you guys, but y'all really did mail out those notices, right? Because
Yes.
usually when you're going from RS6 to multifamily, people are submitting notices, but that was a lot of mail out with nothing.
Ironically, the phone calls we get on the previous case, in fact, many of those, they didn't send their notice back, but they're in favor, mostly because they have to deal with illegal dumping. There's all types of things that are thrown on the property. The grass is too high. They can't track down the neighbor to cut it. So they're happy to see some form of development come in, and even happier that it's going to be single-family homes. In this case, they're more townhouse style, but they're permanent residents. It's not just another renter.
Right, okay.
Can you pull up the notification map on this again?
It was like 37.
Oops, that one. Notification map.
Just the one from
There it
the
is.
slide.
Okay.
So, but you said you only mailed out 7.
Outside. 37 inside the loop and
37 inside and
7
7 out, and the 7 outside were landlords?
those are going to be the school district, and then we take it upon ourselves to take an extra level. So CCISD has a second notification for the demographics department, and then we notify every level of school. So you'll have high school, middle, and elementary, that so they can form.
All the individual campuses?
Yes.
And then the 37, that's per the latest from the state legislature where we got to get landlords and tenants and...
That's everyone inside the circle, yes, sir.
Okay, very cool. That's all I got. Any other questions for staff? All right, with that, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on item number 7, and we have one speaker that has signed up, Mr. Ortiz. Okay. You're good? Okay. Would anybody else like to speak on item number 7? I see none, so I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we pass item 7 as presented by staff.
Second.
So motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, moving on to briefing, item number 8, Bond 2024 Program Overview.
There it is.
Did you the updated one? Yeah, I just put in that one that Lynn sent me. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and the Commission. My name is Nima Young, and I'm Assistant City Manager with the City of Corpus Christi. One of the departments that I manage is the Engineering Department, and the Engineering Department is the department of record for both developing and managing the city's bond programs. If we could bring up the slides. So this is in keeping with our common process for developing the bonds. As you will recall, I was here 2 years ago for Bond 2022, just to ensure that all of our governing agencies, to include the Planning Commission, is up to speed with the city and the community's plans for our bond programs. And I'm sure, as you all are aware, there's been a lot of public discussion regarding the bond programs, and city staff did take into account some of that feedback that we received from the public. Specifically, what is the vision and what is it that we're trying to achieve with the bond? And that vision is here before you. If I pulled up a map demonstrating all the capital investment that has been made in the community as a result of our bond programs from 2004 to 2024, you will note that we have literally changed the landscape of the city, be it roads, facilities, our public safety infrastructure. We've made tremendous progress in ensuring that our city number one, it remains modernized, but number two is ensuring that it's providing our residents the services that they need in order to maintain quality of life. So for our vision, what we wanted to do specifically with Bond 2024 is continue to double down on that return on investment and continue to move the city forward as we continue to lead it into the future. So if you have been following the discussions regarding Bond 2024, you will note that there has been some concerns, or I should say maybe sticker shock for the evaluation of that bond. If you note, the proposal that were presented to you all today, and I anticipate is going to go before council final, will be around $175 million. That's a lot of money. But if you do put a comparable with Bond 2022, what you will note is Bond 2022 was $125 million. So what we're really looking at is a $50 million increase from what we've done with the previous bond program. But more importantly, what I would like to note is where that $50 million gap is going. We do have a small portion of that funding going towards our parks and quality of life projects, but more specifically, what you'll see is there's going to be a significant jump in the investment in our public safety infrastructure from Bond 22 to Bond 2024 to the tune of approximately $35 million. So let's talk about Bond 2024 just a little bit more in detail. For this program, what we're recommending, or at least our original proposal, is 22 street projects, 11 parks projects, 7 public safety projects, and 2 library community center, or what I call facility projects. Another question that we continue to receive, because naturally the Planning Commission isn't the first stakeholder group that we've been to. This has been an ongoing conversation between city staff and our stakeholders in the community since May, I believe, and we anticipate that we're going to continue with these discussions through November when it does make it to the ballot. But so far, even though we're early in our conversations with the community, we have heard recurring themes. First, how much is this going to increase our taxes? And what I'm happy to report for Bond 24, just like Bond 22, we will be able to deliver this portfolio of services and amenities to the community without raising our property tax rate. The second question that's been asked in the community is, okay, if this bond is approved, can the city deliver? And I could say resoundingly, yes, the city can deliver. And that's evidenced by what we call our report card that's depicted before you. If you'll note that in Bond 2020, we have currently at 88% completion rate with the remaining projects in construction. For Bond 22, even though it's only 18 months old, we have all our projects, we have all our projects either in design or in construction. So we are out of that business that you probably have seen in 2008, 2010, where the voters would approve the funding for the bond, and you wouldn't see shovels in the ground for 5, 6, 7, and in some cases 10 years. And the way that we accomplish that is, and you'll note later on in the presentation, that we got a lot smarter on how we're pursuing bond funding and voter approval. First, that's accomplished by ensuring that we're either bringing 1 or 2 projects to the table. It's either going to be a request for funding for the design, the engineering design of the specific projects and the design only, or it's going to be a project that was where the design funds were requested in the previous bond, and now what we're bringing to the voters is shovel-ready projects. So what we're seeing now is that within 9 months of voters approving our bond projects, those projects are in design. Or if those projects have already been designed with previous bond funding, those projects are going into construction within 1 year's time frame. So we're very proud of the work and the progress that our engineering services department has made, and we continue to replicate that success in this program. I'll stand by for any questions, then we'll go into the specific categories.
Appreciate the information and the presentation so far. You did mention that there is no property tax rate increase.
Yes, sir.
How is that possible with still getting this money?
Yes, sir. The way that we're able to do that is by, simply put, debt defeasance. And just to utilize an example, let's say if the city had $100 million worth of debt, Well, that depth is sort of like, I like to use an analogy like it's a credit card where you pay on that depth on your credit card, and as you pay on it, that creates an open balance of credit that you can use. And the city's basically replicating that, but at a macro level versus, the individual consumer. So we are seeing a lot of our previous debt from previous bonds being defeased, and that's creating, a large financial gap. And the city wants to, take advantage of that gap to continue to invest in the community based off of, good financial practices.
So if this bond was not approved by voters, would the tax rate drop, or it would still stay where it's at?
The property tax rate, that's a good question. That's something I could talk to our finance. I assume that it would drop, but that's a question that I have to ask the finance department. But I can follow up with you on that, sir.
And it's not just writing off debt, it's the fact that we've had increased property values.
Yes, of course, that's a contributing factor as well. But naturally, it's not as impactful when we're explaining that, hey, we're exercising good financial practice, we're being good stewards of our tax dollars, managing our debt, and because of those good practices, we are able to continue to bring more services and more amenities to the community.
I have a question. On some of these projects, it says design only. That's
Yes.
design only, and then later on, is there going to be another bond for construction?
That's absolutely correct. So, and I know that I don't have to tell you all, but I do have to keep in mind that we do have a viewing audience. So let's talk about design only just a little bit. When the city staff, or when you see on the bond that it states that it's design only, what we're referring to is engineering design. It doesn't matter if it's a street, a facility, or parks. There's always going to be a requirement for engineers to design those improvements. The reason because you have to account for drainage, you have to account for ADA compliance, and things of that nature. So a lot of factors go into just simply what some people may say is, oh, it's just repairing a street. But the good news is, yes, you do have to pay for the engineering design, and engineering has to go into it, but the deliverable are construction documents. So we have real documents that we could then take, put it out to bid, and we can actually start delivering or going to construction on those projects. So it's no longer just that promise to pay with no plan on how we're going to move, each specific project forward.
But it would go to a construction bond, in other words, a separate.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. And yes, it stated before. So, and the way that we're doing it is we'll ask for design only for a new project. And then in the subsequent bond will then go to the voters and ask for the construction dollars.
So they could, I guess the voters could also shoot it down.
They could.
You could pay for design and then not build something.
That's good. That's correct. Yes, sir. Mr. Chair.
On this Project Scoop, how did you come up with the area, like on the street name from to?
The limits.
With the example I'm going to give you, District 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you say here the street name is Rand Morgan, and you've got it from McNorton to 37.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to do reconstruction on TxDOT, pavement, curb, on and on.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly, how did you get this area? District 1 is not just this part here. There's other areas. You've come up to McNorton. McNorton is by Leopard and Van Morgan, and then McBride. So we also still have the Calicote. We also have, all that Leopard area all the way up to 5 Points. That's also considered, I think, in need of work as well. So how did you come up with the area that you're going to do the construction with for the Project Scoop?
I'll answer that question, but just out of professional curiosity, let's talk about Leopard Street just a little bit. Because I'm not even certain if the public is fully aware, but there was a lot of public discussion regarding the Leopard Street corridor. As you all are aware, that corridor is owned by TxDOT. But approximately a year and a half to 2 years ago, city approached TxDOT and stated that, hey, we are investing a lot into this corridor that's owned by you all, and it is a commercial corridor. And if it's not going to be maintained to at least the city standard, then turn the corridor over to us. TxDOT has agreed, and what they're doing as we speak, they put out to bid not a reconstruction project, but a surfacing project where the Leopard Street corridor is going to be resurfaced, base ferries are going to be addressed, and when it's brought up to maybe not the city standard, but a better standard than its current condition, it is going to be turned over to the city, and we anticipate that that's going to probably take place near the end of the year. So that's just the Leopard Street Turnback program, which is another engineering priority and initiative that we're working on. So I thought that, I utilize this as an opportunity to name drop that and, ensure that the public's
Well, I
informed.
specifically am looking at the area for the street projects, because I'm sure right now, all of Corpus right now is screaming out all of the complaints on the way our streets look, and
Yes, ma'am.
yet they're stating that they've got all these workers working on them, I guess, I don't know, full-time or something. But from what I see out over there, just in that area, I don't drive around every day, Corpus area, I don't see it. I really don't. There's just so many areas there that really need attention. So here I'm seeing the street project, and I'm just curious to see how you're coming up with that project scoop from this street to that street or this area. And I understand that Leopard is TxDOT, but people still live out there that live in the city that have to drive on Leopard and all the other streets around there. So like, I just don't want some of the area out there being bypassed.
I think it's important to point out that every year whenever we approve, or whenever council approves the capital improvement plan, there's identified certain projects throughout the city based on the current condition of the streets and things like that. And what the bond tries to do is fill in the gaps where, if there's, and they always try to do what they call rough proportionality, where, if we're spending 20 million over in District 4, then we need to spend 20 million in 1, 2, 3, and 5 as well. And they identify certain projects that maybe there's gaps in what's already in the CIP and is already planned for that particular area. Then they use the bond as a way to kind of fill in those blanks. Any individual projects, and that's one thing that I always commend the city of Corpus Christi on, especially with regards to street projects, is they're very specific about, we're going to do this part of the street between here and here. And so that way you kind of know, obviously there's always a desire to do more, but
You're absolutely correct, Mr. Miller. The way that, and as you stated, we do make recommendations based off of the condition of the streets. The way that the condition is assessed is we do every 2 years what's called a PCI, or a pavement condition index. We retain a contractor that drives every lane mile within the city with cameras and tools to basically assess the conditions of all the streets in the city. So then when it does come to the bond program, as Mr. Miller stated, we do try to reserve the bonds for, our arterials and collectors based off of, and the ones that are selected in the limits for them are based off of recommendations from the Public Works Department through their assessments of the pavement condition index assessment that we receive every 2 years. But in addition to, the condition of the street, there are also factors that come into play. For example, Rand Morgan, we are fully aware of the fact that it's a narrow corridor. Residential growth has outpaced that corridor, and now we literally have kids in the street trying to walk to school. And so
No sidewalks.
with no sidewalks, and so we realized that, hey, it's time for the city to step in. We need to widen this corridor, and we need to ensure that we're avoiding a safety issue. So that's, it's dynamics like that also go into consideration when making recommendations for our roadways.
Okay, thank you.
Is the city going to take over Rand Morgan? 'Cause isn't that a state highway also?
There haven't been any discussions about taking over Rand Morgan, and Leopard Street was just a unique case given the fact that such a long corridor. Naturally, TxDOT wouldn't mind getting it off the books since it's so long and it is cost heavy. And the city has an interest in the fact that it is, one of our commercial corridors. So we do maintain an interest in ensuring that that its upkeep is maintained.
And are there other instances where we have a state highway, but the city basically puts all the money into it to fix it, to widen it, to put sidewalks, everything else?
Yes, I believe there's probably 12 streets in the city where we have these maintenance agreements. They're identified as TxDOT-owned facilities, but the city assumes responsibility for the maintenance of those corridors. And the last time I looked at the plans, I would ballpark it at around 12 streets that the city and TxDOT maintains our relationship with.
I'm sure the state loves it.
I'm sure they do as well. So,
okay.
But it's a unique situation, and some of these agreements, interesting enough, like Leopard goes back as far as like 1946. So, we're bound by those agreements, and not sure the rationale behind how they arrived at those specific streets, but those relationships do exist, and we do honor them. So with that being said, we'll go into the streets. And Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, there's 22 streets. So instead of going into detail on each and every street, I figured I'd go into citywide, provide a little background on those because those are most pressing. And then we'll give you a high level summary of the streets within each district. And I'll just stand by for questions.
That'll work.
Okay. So for our citywide projects, our first recommendation is $10 million for the reconstruction of Lower Broadway. As you're all fully aware, that's an infamous street in the city with a lot of historical facilities around it. But more importantly, you also are aware that it's a very interesting street in the fact that it has slopes and hills and, a lot of geometry to it. So with this project, it's really lower, middle, and upper Broadway that needs renovation. But currently, we're looking at utilizing Bond 24 to at least address the foundation of the street, which is Lower Broadway. And what we're looking at is not only doing reconstruction of Lower Broadway, but addressing drainage and, more importantly, reconstructing the retention wall that is deteriorating and we feel is going to fail if the city doesn't address this quickly. In addition, we have the North Beach road improvements. And I'm sure you're all aware, I was at the Planning Commission before where we briefed on the North Beach Drainage Project, $14 million project that's all centered around a canal and a multi-tiered approach to addressing drainage in the North Beach Peninsula. And that was approved by council for $14 million. However, the project does include the elevation of Beach Avenue and Gulf Spray Avenue, and the funding is not there. So what we're looking for is permission from the voters for $3 million to do the elevation of those two major corridors on the North Beach Peninsula, making the North Beach Drainage Project complete. And then we also have Yorktown, $4 million to expand and improve that roadway from Mudbridge to Waldron. As you all are aware, we currently have an approved project, and we're actually about to go into construction on Yorktown on the other side of the Mudbridge, from Rodfield to the Mudbridge. That goes into construction in the next 60 days, I believe. And we sat down with TxDOT. TxDOT is fully aware that we're expanding that roadway. So since we are expanding that roadway, the Mudbridge is basically going to become a funnel if it isn't expanded as well. So TxDOT has agreed to expand the Mudbridge. We're expanding the corridor on the northern side of the Mudbridge, and this funding is a request to go ahead and continue on improving that corridor by expanding it from the Mudbridge beyond to Waldron.
Question on that Yorktown, is it anticipated it's going to be the same width as the Broadfield to Mudbridge section, 4 lanes or so, or is it going to be smaller?
And let me, I forgot to introduce my staff. With me, I have Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering. And Jeff, you wanted to talk about the expansion of the Yorktown?
The answer to that is we are going to expand it. I don't know if it's going to be the same configuration with the median divided, but it will be widened.
And on the Lower Broadway project, I noticed recently, I guess it's been about 2 years ago, there was a good news story on the news that the fountain had been restored. And then I drove by there recently and it was filled with rocks. Is the restoration of the fountain part of this, or will it be eliminated, or what's going on with the fountain?
I know we put money and we did get it working. I'm not sure why it's not working now. I'd have to ask somebody else to get an answer.
Well, it's filled with the rocks right now.
Yeah, I don't know who did that. It might have been DMD, or I'm not sure. I can get you an answer on that. But we are looking, as you mentioned, that's a historical feature. The retaining walls are historical, the balustrades, and we've got some slope stability issues out there that we've got to address. And we've got to start at the bottom and work up.
Okay. Well, it's going to be very important to a lot of our more historically sensitive citizens that maintaining that as a historical, historically significant feature is important. So.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Awesome. So then that brings us into the district specific streets. And again, I'll just give you a high-level summary. If you all have questions, please let me know. But we're asking for $3 million to expand Rand Morgan. This would be for the design, I'm sorry. And then we have $3 million that we're asking for the improvements of Sam Rankin from Port to IH-37. What's interesting about this specific project is we have what we call guiding principles, or left and right limits on that helps us to make determinations on which projects we're going to suggest be added to the bond. And one of those principles is the leveraging of third-party dollars. In this case, the port was able to secure an $8.5 million grant from the federal government for the improvement of Sam Rankin. And the port so graciously gave us a call and said that they'd be willing to invest in that corridor, even though it is a city street, as long as we are willing to upgrade the utilities. So what we're looking at here is a $3 million investment in return for $8.5 million worth of improvements for our roadways, thus saving our taxpayers' dollars. For District 2, what we're recommending is $6 million to reconstruct South Staples Access Road, $17 million for construction of Alameda, which is interesting. If you note that we have Alameda construction only from Texan to Doddridge, and Alameda design only from Doddridge to Everhart. So this is basically a continuation project, as we have been working on the Alameda corridor for, what would you say, Jeff, for the last three years? Yeah, 3-4 years. And just like we had with our previous conversation, the design of Alameda from Texan to Doddridge was approved in Bond 22. So now here we are requesting the construction dollars, and at the same time we're asking for the engineering dollars to go ahead and design the improvements from Doddridge to Everhart. And as you can expect, in Bond 26, I'll be back before you, briefing on our seeking of the funding for the construction of the Alameda corridor from Doddridge to Everhart.
Airline to Robert is terrible.
We're actually, it's interesting you bring that up. There are other funding mechanisms that we use to address streets. As you all are aware, we do have our Public Works Department. So the Engineering Department is addressing the corridor, from Doddridge to Everhart with bond funding, but from airline to Enos Jocelyn, we are going to address that stretch of the road with our Public Works Department. And in fact, I think that goes into construction at the end of this year.
Well, as somebody that drives it every day, airline to, you can just call it airline to Doddridge, is pretty bad. And the airline to Enos Jocelyn section is bad in spots closer to airline. But from, call it South Shores to Enos Jocelyn is pretty good. So just kind of keep that in mind whenever you're doing your condition assessments and prioritizing.
Yes, sir. Noted, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right, for District 3, what we're asking for is $2.5 million for the design of Bear Lane, $2 million for the design of Allen Crest, and $2 million for the design of Shannon. For District 4, what we're requesting is the $11 million construction only of Holly Road, as that was designed in the previous bond. $3 million for the design to expand Graham Road, and $3.7 million to knock out a network of residential streets in the Terra subdivision. Also, we're asking for $1 million for what we call the JFK Causeway project. This is a project that was in the 2008 bond, and as I stated before, it was a project that grew long in the tooth. And when the city finally came around to decide that we're going to address it, construction costs have increased, and we don't have enough funding to complete the project. So what we're asking for here is $1 million to do the remaining improvements to the area. And when I say JFK Causeway, what I'm referring to is the area under the causeway where we have Snoopy's, Pier 37, the boat ramps, and that area. And we're looking at doing surface roadway improvements, lighting, drainage, things of that nature to protect that commercial portion of the corridor. For District 5, what you'll note that this one is very design heavy, as requested by our councilman. We have $3.3 million for the design of Cimarron, $2.5 million for the design of Acushnet, $2.5 million for the design and expansion of LIPES, $2.5 million for the design of Grand Junction. In addition, we're asking for $2.5 million for the continued expansion of Rodfield. As you all are fully aware, we did complete the Rodfield expansion project from Yorktown down, and now we're looking to finish that last leg to provide the residents in that area a second egress route, since Yorktown is going to go into construction.
Quick question. Have we ever had any bond projects that were design only that construction got funded by other means that didn't show up on a subsequent bond?
I'm not sure. They're going back in the history.
So this is kind of a new model that we're using. I like it because it creates an unrealistic expectation when you put the design and construction on one bond, because you usually have a long design process. And when you put it on the bond, people expect to see equipment and construction taking place pretty quick. And they don't really perceive the design process, and sometimes the permitting is a long process. So it is an improvement to do it this way. And we also tend to have a better idea when we've done some of the design. As we're preparing for the construction dollars on the bond, we've got a better estimate and have a little bit more precision. Now, I would say one that comes to mind, for example, like Fire Station 3, I think we put the design on the bond, and then we actually used various funding. It was a blend of funding that included certificates of obligation, ARPA funds, and things like that. So that's one that comes to mind.
I'm sorry. And another one that immediately comes to mind is the Holly Road Rails to Trails project in Flower Bluff, connecting Flower Bluff to the Wildlife Preserve. That was funding in Bond 22 for a preliminary design for the project, and it was actually pre-planned to be added to Bond 24 for construction. However, city staff was able to secure a $17 million grant for the project. So again, that's just one more leverage in third-party dollars, where we did the design. We was able to get third-party funding for the project itself, and we're going to deliver that amenity to our Flower Bluff citizens and our community as a whole, without having to depend on tax dollars for it.
The Yorktown project, that was a design only, correct?
You're
on this bond?
Bridge to Walburn, yes.
That's what I'm thinking about. Like, if TxDOT, moves us up on the list for the bridge, and we need to scurry and find some funding as not to tie up all of Yorktown, like they build the bridge and then we got to go back and later, complete the construction portion of it. Just making sure that there are options for design-only projects that were passed in a subsequent bond to inevitably get built, even if they fail on a construction-only, subsequent bond.
Yeah, and the only thing that you're prevented, if it does fail, you can't use certificates of obligation for a period of 3 years, but you can pursue other alternative funding. And if there is any potential, we do look into that.
Ooh, that's a good point. I'll have to think about that.
But a lot of times it does help you have the designs. I mean, for example, like the Rand Morgan that we discussed, which is a TxDOT road. Now, we would certainly be open to trying to get some external funding through MPO, TxDOT, if that's available. But right now, it's not in the near range plan, and that's why we're stepping up and going ahead and doing the design on that.
Got it. Thank you.
So that's streets. That then brings us into our parks and recreation projects. Our first recommendation is $10 million to replace the clubhouse at Oso Golf Center. $2 million to assist the Texas State Aquarium with parking lot improvements. As you all are fully aware, the old bridge is coming down. However, the current parking lot that is being utilized by the aquarium is in TxDOT right-of-way directly under the bridge. The aquarium was made aware of the fact that when the bridge comes down, TxDOT does not intend to continue to own that right-of-way, nor can they guarantee the aquarium that they can give it to them. And so they warned the aquarium that they needed to do some planning, advanced planning, for the new Harbor Bridge. So the Texas State Aquarium has identified a new property that could serve as their new parking lot, and they're asking that we as a city partner with them and give them $2 million or invest $2 million into the new parking lot infrastructure. In addition, we have $4.5 million for building a new aquatic center in the Hillcrest area. This project is being recommended because it will bring us in compliance with the Federal Highway Association and the New Harbor Bridge, which is a historical case from the Hillcrest residents with the state and the Federal Highway Association from 4 or 5 years ago. $1.75 million to continue our improvements in the Labonte Park expansion, and $2 million for continued improvement in Sherrill Veterans Memorial Park. In District 2, we're looking for $1 million to make improvements to the parking lots in Cole Park. As you've driven by there, you've seen that through previous bond programs, we have built a splash pad there, replaced the playground there, and we anticipate that that's only going to increase the flow of tourists and citizens to the facility, and we are concerned that that increased flow of patronage to the park is going to outpace the capacity of the parking lots. In addition, we are asking for $2.75 million for our continued investment in renovating the Greenwood Baseball Complex, $5 million for improvements in Commodore's Park, $2 million for improvements in Perry Place, and $1 million to build out boat ramps at Dimmitt Pier.
Will Commodore's Park have the skate park that everybody wants?
Eventually. The Parks and Recreation Department has, they're currently actively working a master plan for Commodore's Park, which includes, of course, public engagement and input. And it's my understanding that they are tracking, that desire or that request for a skate park, and that's probably going to be achieved later on in the phasing of the build out of Commodore's Park.
Cool.
And finally, we're requesting $2.75 million for Billwood Park. Again, in Bond 2020, we requested the Billwood Aquatic Center. It's currently in construction with an anticipated completion date of August. So naturally, that's a significant $15 million facility. So with the way that the staff sees it, we had this $15 million facility in there, but if you've been inside of Bellwood Park, the infrastructure is failing. So what we're looking for is $2.75 million to do resurfacing of the roadways, to address drainage, to put up a perimeter fence, to protect the community's investment in the aquatic center, and more importantly, in the park as a whole. And I'll stand by for any questions regarding parks. Okay. Well, then that takes us into our public safety. And you'll note that we're asking for $25 million for the replacement of Fire Station 10 and Fire Station 8, both of which designs were captured in previous bond programs. In addition to replacing Fire Station 10 and Fire Station 8, we're seeking $5 million to do the design of Fire Station 9 and Fire Station 11, with anticipation of seeking the construction dollars in Bond 26. On the police side of the house, what we're looking for is decentralizing the police department. And when I say decentralizing, what I mean is modernizing our model that you would see in any city, any top 10 city where you have substations, throughout the community. That way the citizens, that way our police department can exercise community policing, maintain a permanent presence, and more importantly, makes the police department more accessible to our citizens. So we're starting off with the build out of those substations in the far north of the city in Cal Allen, and then the far south of the city in District 5. $9 million for the Cal Allen substation and $5 million for the construction of the far south substation. In addition, we're requesting $1 million for the design of a police substation that's going to be near La Palmera Mall, which is located in Police District 5, not Council District 5.
Dr. Young?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Just want to make a correction. The Northwest Police Substation at West Goose Park is in the Annabelle area, not Cal Allen.
Okay. Yes, sir. Noted.
I've always had to correct you guys with West Goose Park. You keep saying it's in Cal Allen. It is not in Cal Allen. It is in Annabelle.
I keep telling Jeff that, sir. I don't know.
Come on, guys.
Yes, sir.
Totally different area.
Noted, sir.
But it's going to, help out the Cal Allen area.
Cal Allen and
the Northwest area, okay?
Yes, sir.
Let's just get the area locations correct here.
Fair enough, sir.
What is Arlington Hills? Arlington Heights.
It's a private school.
Is that Annabelle or is that Cal Allen?
Annabelle.
Okay. You look at a map and it says Arlington Heights.
That's the location of the school, private school.
Sorry, didn't mean to derail.
Fair enough.
How many police substations do we have currently? I know there's one in the Bluff.
Yeah, is that the only one?
They used to operate that one.
Yeah.
They used to operate that one on Holly, or no, I'm sorry, Saratoga and Crosstown, but that one, they stopped, and that's something else now. So I think the Bluff is the only one we've got currently.
Yeah, Northwest will be the second. They're going to go throughout the whole district and the whole city.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
One in each district from what I understand, but it's just going to take some time.
It's going to take time. Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I saw a light on. I apologize. So moving away from public safety, that then brings us into our facilities projects. And this is quite interesting. Even though District 5 is, as everybody knows, it has been designated as the high growth area for the community, we lack the facilities that keep up with that growth. Specifically, what we're looking for here is $2 million to do the design of a combination library/community center. Currently, the only library in District 5 is in Brockhampton Park. The Garcia Library is shared with the Caffey Middle School. And as we're all aware, and rightfully so, CCISD is tightening up its security measures on all of its campuses. And as they tighten up the security measures, public access to that shared library is slowly being reduced. And so we felt that it's time, we've outgrown that model of a shared facility with our school districts. And what we're seeking here is to go ahead and move forward with building out an independent standing city-owned facility for our residents. In addition, we're asking for $1.25 million to do some renovations and upkeep to our historical homes in Heritage Park. So as Mr. Chair has stated before, there is rough proportionality, and the whole point of it is that we want to be equitable. I define equitable as, whatever $175 million, that $175 million of revenue is equally distributed across all 5 council districts. That way no one's benefiting more than the other. Now, what the color of those dollars looks like, as you can see, could be different. It may be more in parks in some districts and more in streets in others, but that's really driven by, the needs that's been identified in each council district. But at the end of the day, if you look at the bottom row, you'll note that each district is roughly receiving a rough proportionate or equal distribution of the funding for the district. So as I also stated before, this isn't our first community meeting. We have been actively engaged with stakeholder groups across the city, and what's depicted before you is upcoming meetings through June. However, we do have a schedule that we're going to continue to update that's going to take us out into November. The reason why we are meeting with stakeholder groups, I don't have to tell you all, but I know I do have to tell the watching or attending audience. What we want to make sure is that the Bond 24 program is not a plan that's been developed in a vacuum or a closed door, development that's created by city staff. No, what we're looking for is, and what we're encouraging our residents to do is participate in these stakeholder meetings, these public meetings, provide us feedback, and that will allow us to continue to refine the plan. So when it does, if it does, make it to the ballot in November, what's on that ballot is not a city staff plan or a city government plan. It's a community plan that has been identified and crafted by the residents that are going to be impacted by such plan. So we're going to continue that best practice moving forward, and we'll continue to engage with different groups across the community. I do want to note that this is a brief and this is an abbreviated version of that presentation, but there is a very much more comprehensive and detailed presentation which describes each project, graphics, and everything like that for every project on the Bond 2024 proposal, and that can be found at cctexas.com/Bond 2024. In addition, as we update the plans or we update, the public meetings for the bond, we'll also utilize that site as the site of record for our citizens to stay informed. And we highly encourage citizens to come out, attend stakeholder meetings, provide us feedback, shoot us emails, or you give us phone calls, whatever it takes to ensure that we are crafting a plan that's meeting everyone's needs. And I'll stand by for any questions, Mr. Chair.
I got 2 questions. First question is, how do you, and this kind of expands on Commissioner Salazar Garza's initial question about Rand Morgan. Is there like a process that staff uses? I mean, is it departmental that brings forward potential projects and then the ACMs select, which ones and kind of work out the math for rough proportionality? Or how do the projects get brought forward?
Yes, yes, we do. When we start talk about the bond programs, the initial conversations do start with our departments. As you know, they are the heartbeat of the city government. They're closest to the ground, have good understanding of the different needs and priorities in the community. So we will reach out to those departments, ask them what challenges are they seeing in each district, and what recommendations would they make, to address said challenges. And from there, we do get a laundry list of different projects, and we'll try to scope it down into something that's salvageable, or I'm sorry, feasible, for the community. And I say feasible because there's always going to be more need than there is dollars. We could have easily brought, our proposal here for $350 million, but the reality is we can't afford that. That's not feasible. So we try to cull that list down to, the most impactful projects that's addressing the most, the hardest hitting needs in each council district.
When you say scoping,
Mm-hmm.
when you say scoping, I mean, are they driving out there to go take a look at it, or do they see it on the map, or do they hear it from the public, or?
We're in the community. Our departments, public safety is in the community, Parks and Recreation is definitely in the community. The Public Works Department is in the community, so it's definitely not, a map reconnaissance. It's, what they've been seeing over the last 2 years since the last bond program. So they say, hey, this is what we've been seeing. You probably want to take a look at this, and that's what they'll base their recommendations off of.
Because things change a lot within 2 years.
Oh, without a doubt. But again, our guys are out there daily, so as the situation on the ground changes, they're identifying it because they are out there in the community.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that I've noticed in the community engagement sessions, it's more of a, this is what we're going to ask you for, and what are your comments? But is there a mechanism, or has there ever been put into practice actually taking that feedback and maybe culling one project in favor of another? Or?
Yes. Bond 22. And if you all go back to the tapes and look at the proposal that I presented to the Planning Commission in 22, and do a comparable of that presentation that I gave you all versus what was on the ballot, you'll notice that some of the projects that were on the ballot wasn't briefed to the Planning Commission because it changed based off of feedback that we have received from our community engagement. So it's very real when we ask for that feedback. It is taken into consideration, and from our previous programming, I have personally seen, the original proposal change based off of feedback from our citizens.
Very good. Commissioner Munoz.
How do you determine who you engage for that community feedback?
We cast our net wide. Wide. I try to engage as many stakeholder groups as possible. And the reason why I do that is because eventually we do have to go back to council, and, we do have to defend our proposal. And I want to be able to look council in the eye and state that, hey, we talked to as many community groups that would have us. So, some community groups, if they don't make it to the list, it's either we weren't able to catch up with them, or, they had busy agendas, but it's not for a lack of motivation or desire to engage with each and every community group that we have in the city.
And you have engagements until November, I heard you say?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At least October. But we're going to continue engaging because, and truth be told, it's a good way to engage and get feedback from the community, but it's also a good way to get the word out as well. So we're trying to take care of two different priorities.
One last question. Obviously, the 2022 bond at $125 million versus the $175 in 2024. There's been, inflation in the past 2 years. It hadn't been quite as steep as in previous years prior to 22, but there has been some inflation. But based on, has everything in Bond 22, I know that the work hasn't been completed, but has everything been bought?
No, sir. The bulk majority of those projects are in design. So naturally, there's nothing to bid out for construction or nothing to purchase at the moment.
But I'm talking, so like on a design contract that's a design only, right? You base your consultant or your engineer's fees off of what the perceived cost of the project is, and then if there's cost overruns, then you give them a change order for additional design services based on that. Is that correct, Jeff?
I would say it's generally correct, but it's not hardwired based, hey, you get a percentage of estimated construction. That kind of gets us in the ballpark, but we ask for detailed level of effort proposals from the engineer, and that's what their fees are based off of. And so when we budget something in there for design only, that's really not indicative of design fees. It's really front-end costs. And we're going to negotiate each and every one of those contracts and try and get a fair deal for us, fair deal for the AE. Any money that's not used on that front end is going to be available to roll over into construction. But it also handles things like land acquisition. If we've got land acquisition in there, we'll use that money for that aspect too.
How is it trending? So if voters approved $125 million for 2022, I mean, how is it trending? Is there a variance? Because I've seen several 22 or 20 bond projects come in, $3 or $4 million over budget. I mean, how are we doing?
22, we don't have enough data yet. 20, we did better than 2018. 2018, we had a lot of issues on 2018. And there was a lot of, we used certificates of obligation to fill some of those gaps. 22, it seems to be going much better.
One thing I would personally like to see, and I have no control over this as chairman of the planning commission, but one thing that I'd personally like to see is whenever a design firm is engaged and they are given a budget to design within that budget, one thing that I've seen a lot of is, it came in over budget. And so a change order is issued to the contractor, or a contract is issued to a contractor larger than the construction amount, and then a change order is given to the design team for the increased cost of construction and their fees. So there's really no incentive for design professionals to design a project within a certain box when they're just going to get extra money if it comes in over budget. So it would be nice to see it, see some more teeth put into these things to where, this was your budget, you were hired to design to this budget, and you didn't perform, so there shouldn't be an incentive for things to come in over budget.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we typically don't. It's usually driven more by the client than by the AE. We usually don't give them carte blanche and say, bring me back whatever you think we want. Now, there's different baskets of projects. I mean, you've got projects like the one we're sitting in right here, and this was driven very much by the client. We had the AE that was helping, but we had a tremendous amount of input into that. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to hold them accountable if they're being very responsive to your input. But I agree with you, if you give them a budget and you say, give me a design that fits this budget, and we have done it on occasion, and we have make them redesign on their nickel. We don't pay them to do redesign to get within budget. Now, the other kind of projects, like road projects, for example, you don't have a lot of degrees of freedom. It's difficult for me to say, let's take a lane out of Alameda. Those bids came in high. Let's just, let's make it 3 lanes instead of 5 lanes. So on those projects, there's not as much latitude to change things. I mean, you've got to design, you could take a block out, but usually that's not acceptable. Taking width out is not acceptable, and you really don't want to go to a pavement design that's, we're using a 30-year pavement design standard. I don't think anybody would want to say, hey, let's go to a 10-year on this because the bids came in a little high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in those cases, I think being creative with, or more thoughtful with regards to the contracts, the design contracts, we're price it based on a scope as opposed to a dollar amount.
Yeah, I think the better thing for us is, look, we really need to do a better job, and we are constantly improving this and scoping these things properly and budgeting properly. I would say when those things come in over budget, usually it's a failure in the scoping part of it, that we really haven't adequately scoped and estimated as much as being, gold-plated in the design process. Mm-hmm. And part of the change where we're doing the design on one bond and the construction on another, it's going to help that, because under the old model where you throw design and construction dollars in there before you've even done any design, it's kind of a Mark I eyeball approach to it, whereas when we put projects on here for construction dollars, and we're at 30, 60% design. We've got much better estimates than when you've just got a really using a parametric estimate, you know, so much per square yard or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Munoz.
I think what Commissioner Miller is advocating for is, Chairman Miller, sorry, is the CM at risk process. So it sounds like, whether he said that or not, but is the CM at risk process allowed in the bond program, and have you guys considered that? I know it may not work for civil work, but for general contracting work.
We
possibly.
have done that. We did that, for example, on Fire Station 18, when that was built. We have done some design build projects. I think it's better on a facility type project.
Right.
So yeah, we are allowed, and we have done it a little bit. And
successful or unsuccessful in your opinion?
I would say on that one it was successful. It's, you know, there's pros and cons to it, and you know, the part of the question is how much at risk are they really? Because usually what they do is, since they have control of the designer, and if it's not working out in the construction project, they're diluting, you know, see him at risk guy and going into his pocket and put more money on the table. Usually what he's doing is, you know, diluting the design to get within the budget.
Yeah. I think what intrigues me about the process is the fact that with the contractor on board, with the designer early on, they're able to submit bids at different levels of design so that they're able to rail in that design early on if in case it does start getting more grandiose than you expected. You're able to do some initial budgeting through the general contractor, through subcontractors.
Yes, I agree. That early contractor involvement is, you know, I know you guys have heard we're kind of contemplating a big water plant project.
I haven't heard of that.
We're looking at alternative delivery mechanism on that, progressive design build, which looks a lot like what you're talking about, where the contractor's engaged at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what I was getting at. I'm going to use the Police Training Academy as an example. Because I personally offered my services free of charge just to provide input, and I have. I provided some information to Al Raymond on whenever they were looking at expanding the development services, you know, just kind of a peer review. Because like you said, there's things in scoping that, you know, a designer sits down with a user and says, well, what do you need out of the facility? Well, I need to be able to train this many cadets. And then the designer says, well, what kind of structure do you think you want? Steel or concrete? You know, and they say, well, what's better? Well, I don't know, you know, and the choice was elected to make the structure at the training academy out of concrete. And I saw some defense of the concrete decision in council stating that, well, you know, the steel prices were shooting up so high that, you know, we thought concrete was going to be cheaper than structural steel, which is not the case, never would be the case. So understanding that, you know, something that is said in a scope meeting, you know, how much that could affect, you know, a budget, you know, by millions and millions of dollars, one decision, and then make it that hard to redesign to get within, you know, what the original budget was at the you know, expense of, you know, program stuff, or, you know, being able to train fewer cadets or something like that. I think it's important to understand that and have that, those kinds of discussions before it gets too far along. So, you know,
I think I would agree with you that if you are really budget constrained, an alternative delivery method would be a better way than relying on an architect to design to a budget. Right.
Yeah, because they're so trained, and, you know, the customer's always right? But can the customer afford what they want, you know, within, especially on something like a bond project that, yeah. When public funds are involved. But I know it's a difficult task, and y'all do the best you can, so appreciate it.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commission, thank you all for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Okay, Director's Report. Mr. Dice is not here, so I guess we don't have a Director's Report. If there's no future agenda items, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
No future items. Somebody taking care of that humming? I'm not the only one that hears it, right? I don't have to. Yeah. Just in your head, bro.